Well, I love that you underline sometimes you want a cheerleader and versus a coach. And that's really important to define the difference because you can have various different relationships with a coach, right? Like depending on what your goals are. And there's times when you just want a cheerleader, and that may be a coach too, right? Like a coach is sometimes a cheerleader. And and there's times when a coach will ask you to do things that you might be uncomfortable with. So the difference between, a coach might be like, is the vision. How do you want that relationship to be? Do you want that person to coach you to do things that are uncomfortable? And often to take a quantum leap in your performance or results you want to have, it's going to take some actions that you're uncomfortable with or you've never done before. And if they're a worthy coach, they will probably ask you to do some things you don't want to do. And it may require a coach's got to do whatever they got to do to get you to perform, right? So sometimes they're a cheerleader, sometimes they will just crack the whip. But you want the person who is coached, you want to also anticipate what style is going to work the best for me.
What do Emma Hayes, Cecile Landy, and Patrick Rotagalo have in common? Perhaps if I shared the area that they're known in, it would help make the connection. Women's soccer, tennis, gymnastics. Do you need another clue? How about the 2004 U.S.? How about the 2024 U.S. women's soccer team, Serena Williams, and the 2024 U.S. women's gymnastics teams? And these are the coaches of all of those people and teams. Now, our listeners are high-achieving women that work with coaches to help them raise and elevate their level of performance and achieve better results. Coaches can be used for all aspects of your life, including your relationships, physical fitness, personal and career development, and in our cases, your personal finances. This is Felicia Gopaul and Mandy Herig, your co-hosts of the Her Money podcast series. And today we're going to be talking about the power of coaching with one of my former coaches. Now, the term coach was first used in Oxford University to describe an instructor who helps a student with an exam or activity. And today's coaches help people and describes the process of carrying a person from one stage of development to the next. So today's guest is Kim Trent. She, like Mandy and I, help people around money. Before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Kim. Kim says that her calling is helping people live their lives with purpose. She focuses on money because she says money is the fabric that runs through all of our lives, including our relationships with the people that we love, as well as ourselves. And she says that, or she believes that when people have a firm foundation on their wealth building, once it's laid, people will have the opportunity to create a life that they love and a purpose that they love. And so welcome. It's my pleasure to have today's guest, Kim Trent, on. Kim, hello and welcome.
Hi, Felicia and Mandy. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's so much fun. It's, I have to tell you, one of the best things about this podcast is getting to talk to people I like. Like people that I respect. So I really enjoy that. But today, the first question that I have to ask you is, do you, Kim, define what a coach is?
How would I define a coach?
Mm-hmm.
Well, first off, I would say that having a coach is, if you're interested in performance, then you want to be interested in having a coach. If the examples that you just mentioned of those women, those are all performers, right? They performed at a very high level. And without having a coach, it's almost impossible to reach and transform at a quantum level to the level that we really want, you know? So I actually broke it down into 3 points around coaching that, I don't know, uh, unless you just want me to answer who a coach is or define it for, define it. Is that what you'd like me to do, or?
Actually, I think Mandy has a question before we jump into that, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. As someone who's been coached myself, I know something that I ran into is sometimes I would, when I'm being coached, I would be like, wait a minute, no, I want a cheerleader, not a coach. So I was wondering if you could speak to, sometimes when you're being coached, you're being challenged. And so can you speak a little bit to the difference between someone being a cheerleader and being a coach?
Yeah. Well, I love that you underline sometimes you want a cheerleader and versus a coach. And that's really important to define the difference because you can have various different relationships with a coach, right? Like depending on what your goals are. And there's times when you just want a cheerleader, and that may be a coach too, right? Like a coach is sometimes a cheerleader. And there's times when a coach will ask you to do things that you might be uncomfortable with. So the difference between, a coach might be like, is the vision? How do you want that relationship to be? Do you want that person to coach you to do things that are uncomfortable? And often to take a quantum leap in performance or results you want to have, it's going to take some actions that you're uncomfortable with or you've never done before. And if they're a worthy coach, they will probably ask you to do some things you don't want to do. And it may require a coach has got to do whatever they got to do to get you to perform, right? So sometimes they're a cheerleader, sometimes they will just crack the whip. But you want the person who is coached, you want to also anticipate what style is going to work the best for me.
Perfect. Mandy, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, that's great. Because like you said, sometimes I just want to be told I'm doing a good job, but sometimes I need to have, someone breathing down my neck and saying, did you make those calls? And let's step out of your comfort zone. And so I really like that because that's something that I think we all struggle with is, sometimes we need somebody to push us out of our comfort zone and the coach can do that in a loving, supportive way.
Yeah. Well, Mandy, I was thinking like, I've been different roles where a coach or a trainer, I've been a recruiter with a company straight out of college and a trainer. And I was also a math tutor at some point in my life. I've been a transformational coach where I coach people on their relationships and their health and their well-being. And then now I'm a money coach. So throughout it all, I've really been, I've had to use different cards to have people perform because there are ultimately, it's about performance and it's about taking action because if you don't take the action and if a coach doesn't have you take the action, then ultimately like, what's the point? Right. So there's times when I've been very much like, the carrot to the donkey. But sometimes I've also been the one with the stick behind the donkey. Right. And with the same person, so I've been all the things. And because, I'm thinking of this one coachee I had who, he was very much like, do what you got to do. I need to perform and I need to get these results. And I know that without this accountability, I'm just not going to do it. So I'm like, hey, how you doing? And just checking in. And then there's times when I've been very much like, you can say, ruthlessly compassionate. And sometimes it's more ruthless than it is compassion, right? And then there's more times when it's more compassion than it is ruthless. But you got to do both, and you got to be clear about, what's at stake here, because often isn't just, if your goals are, and I'll lead to the next point. If your goals are, I just want to lose 5 pounds. Let's say, for example, for a health goal, if you just want to lose 5 pounds and it's no big deal if you don't. But if you want to, let's see, like I gotta lose 50 pounds and my life depends on it, then it's a different type of what's at stake, right? So, that will determine what coach you're going to need and what kind of coaching is required, because the more uncomfortable that level of activity is, what you're being asked to do, the less you're going to want that coaching.
So let me just say that she's talking to me. Definitely talking to me. I told you that Kim was my coach, and there were times where really what I wanted was a cheerleader on the other side of the phone. But other times when I was really up to something, when I was really trying to accomplish a goal, then having that ruthless compassion was really what I needed. And so, one of the things that I would say, if you're looking for a coach, you really got to be really clear on what it is that you're looking for. And you really, I think a starting point is having goals. Would you agree with that, Kim, or is there something you would add?
Absolutely. You definitely want to have a goal in mind, especially one that scares you a little bit. And it's not just having any sort of goal, it is having something that stretches your comfort level. But, you might have that specific goal for yourself, and a coach's job is to be able to then partner with you and, okay, so clear, that's the goal. And is it a goal that is realistic? Is it going to be something that is, or is it just too easy? If it's too easy, I mean, you don't need a coach. You don't need me for that, right, Felicia? It's like, okay, if that scares you a little bit, then okay, then I will be that extra catalyst. Like, it's that extra, like, punch in the arm, so to speak. And, the coach's job is to remind you of that goal, or I would even say North Star, like I like to say that as a coach, and really long-term vision and a North Star is where I'm taking you. So when I'm meeting with my clients, it's like, okay, what's your purpose? What's your North Star here? And we're not just looking short term, we're looking long term. So, I've had coaches before where, by the way, like health goals, I'm like, I think I want one, but I don't think I want one either, because I don't want to not eat that bag of potato chips, And then there's times where I'm for sure like, okay, I know that I want to retire. Like I know I'm 39 right now, and I'm not going to want to work for the next 50 years. I might at some point just want to spend time with grandkids, right? And what is that going to look like? And how am I going to be able to fulfill on that without having to be worried? And because as you created, that money weaves through everything. So to your question about having a goal, I'm like, gosh, talk about, there's a goal and then there's like a vision and a North Star. So the coach is there to remind you of whatever that North Star is, continuously remind you of whatever that is when you forget, because you will forget. And then we create a plan, you execute, and the coach continues to remind you as you're executing it, okay, are we there? Are we on track? And that's why when you're meeting with a coach, they meet with you regularly, because it's not just a once and done. I think that in the financial world, sometimes people think, okay, I just need a financial plan and I'll do it. Well, what's the problem there? Well, what about the human being part where we don't like to be told what to do, right? And so that's when you check in with your coach. How am I doing? Like, am I keeping on track with it? And, you've heard the analogy, you're flying from LA to New York. 99% of the time, you're not on track. So that's why the pilot is constantly adjusting so that you get to New York.
So Kim, along with that, then let me ask you, so does needing a coach, does that mean that, you can't do it on your own? Or if you, does that mean you're weak? Or, or if you're strong, then you don't need a coach and, you just need a plan and you can do it?
Well, it depends on what your goals are. I think Michael Phelps once said, Michael Phelps, of course, I don't need to create who Michael Phelps is, because we all know him at this point, right? And he shared that, of course, you need a coach. The strongest people and the highest performers have a coach for everything. They have a nutrition coach. They have gosh, I don't know all the coaches that Michael Phelps had, but I can tell you that I'm like looking at I have a friend who does Ironman, right? So she's got a nutrition coach, she's got a stretch coach, she's got a cardio coach. I mean, she's got like, I don't know, like 10 coaches, right? So, you know, it's not a matter of strong or weak. It's a matter of humanity. How human being are you? And I would say we're all human beings. So it depends on what we're up to and what we want and how much we want to achieve it. That's gives you the at stakeness of a coach. When I had a recent goal, and I was looking at, I wanted to fit into my wedding dress, which I just got married, by the way. We eloped. And
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
thank you. I got my dress, and I went to get it altered, and I told my seamstress I was going to lose 5 pounds, right? And she was like, "Well, we're just going to adjust it to the size that you're at now," which I don't guess what. I really didn't do the things I needed to lose to lose 10 pounds or 5 pounds. So ultimately, I did not have a coach. I didn't do what I needed to do, and let's just suffice it to say that the dress was a little tight. But my point is that I didn't have really that much at stakeness into it. It was like, well, that's, if I do, if I don't, it's no big deal. But when it comes to like having a coach and having to do with yourself and being a strong person, I mean, gosh, the more coaches you have, the stronger you really are. Because it's like, sometimes we think that there's this thing called overconfidence bias. We have people who are extremely qualified in one area. They may be a PhD in nuclear physics, but they have a very poor muscle in, right? So the overconfidence bias might be, and I see this a lot more with engineers, right? By the way, I've had clients who are engineers, and I've seen both, right? So this isn't an overall arching categorization of engineers, okay? So if you're listening and you're an engineer, this is not the truth. But people who are very analytical and like to look at, the investing component, there's really like, there's the science of it, right? And then there's the human being side where I may know the science, but as far as executing on the science and the numbers, it takes something else. And that's what a coach is really there for. So it's the discipline. Is it that it's the intangible that you as a human being, are you always in control of your emotions? And if the answer is no, then you are ripe for a coach. Does that answer your question, Mandy?
It does. And I would add that one of the things that I think people don't necessarily recognize, perhaps at the beginning of a coaching relationship, is the coach sees everything that you do, and you don't always see it yourself. When you're in the middle of something, you may not see the aspects that. So first and foremost, one of the things that about working with a coach is the coach has, if the coach has been in the game for a while, has seen a lot of other people. So, but you've only seen your life. You know what I'm saying? So one way of doing it. So what the coach can also bring to a relationship and a partnership is all of what they've seen other people do, and they can bring it into their coaching of you. So that's one thing that I would add. And then they can also see things that you don't particularly see. So as I said, Kim was my coach. And so when she was talking to me, she could see from the other people that she was coaching some of the things that I was doing, that some of the other things that other people were doing that I wasn't doing. And she could bring that into the coaching relationship so that I could then use it myself. Whereas I would only go down this one particular road because that was the road that was comfortable for me, and that was the road that I knew. And that, even though the results were not necessarily what I wanted to achieve, going down that road, it was the road that I knew. And so one of the things that I think is important to also bring into this conversation is the coach sees things that I don't see and can add that to their coaching. Would you add anything to that, Kim, or is there anything else you would say, or would you
Yeah, sure.
contradict?
I would definitely say that you demanded coaching.
Mhm.
You came to me at some point, and over the time that I was your coach. You there was a time when you're really hungry for it and you really wanted the coaching, and then I was like, oh, this is fun, then we can really do something here. Like we started coming up with other things. Like I started come up, I had to be creative, so I had to come up with, like, okay, here's the structure, here's this pathway, and we really like like a just simplified it. So step 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. And then now all we got to do is just execute it. Right. And then it became just fun. And so I would say that, there was a time I've heard this quote: you will remain the same until the pain of remaining the same is greater than the pain of the change. And I think at some point you felt the pain enough to be like, okay, look, I can't continue doing what I'm doing. We got to do something different here. And I think that's what it was like. Okay, we got to do something now.
Okay, say that one more time. That was great.
You will remain the same until the pain of remaining the same is greater than the pain of the change. Because like all real change, it takes something. You got to deal with something because you have so many years of neuronal pathway. I mean, that's the same pathway in your brain, and your brain is now, you can say, wired to do what it's doing, to think the way it's thinking, and that's just the way it is. It occurs that way, right? Until you start acting and doing something different, and that takes an astronomical amount. Is that the right word? Astronomical?
It works today.
But it takes an astronomical amount of effort and discipline to implement a new change or something new in your life. I mean, gosh, it is, because it's your brain, right? It's not just a habit. It's, we've read enough books now, and we've done enough things now and try to implement enough change now that we know it's hard. And so when you early on, it's especially important to have a little hand holding early on, because we know that if you're trying to implement a new change or something new, it's almost impossible to implement something for a long term. But if you can stick to something early on for a solid couple of months, then you can then start to maybe rely on yourself, but you can wean it back. But I mean, early on, it's even more critical to hire a coach and have one.
So
go ahead.
I have a question then along that. So, if I'm looking for a coach, what should I look for? How do I know if someone's a good coach?
Well, I think you'd start to look for what you want to achieve first. So this is a question that you want to ask yourself is, what do I need? And can I do this by myself? And if you can't do it by yourself and fulfill on that, I'm sure, we go through the stages of, okay, fail to do it myself. And then we consider having somebody else look from another view, like Felicia mentioned, is because, other people can see things that you can't see yourself doing. The last person we look at is ourselves. And so one is, can I do this by myself? The answer is no, then definitely bring on a coach. And then secondly is, what kinds of results has this coach produced? And if it's somebody who you've seen produce the results themselves, they're demonstrating, they're living it, they've produced it with other people, then credibility, and you can trust them to be your partner, because there really is a partnership, then that's a heavy consideration. And then thirdly is, what style of coaching and how willing are you to be coached? And who are you going to be when this coach asks you to do something that you don't want to do? Are you going to fire them because you don't want to do what they're telling you to do to keep you on track? I don't know, but if that's the case, maybe a coach isn't for you, and you might not be, it's not going to be fun for you, and it's not going to be fun for your coach. Right. And, the last thing I would say about that is that you don't have to like your coach either for that coach to be effective.
Mhm.
And I think that that's the piece that sometimes that we want our coach to be someone who's likable, and you may love that coach, but there's going to be times when, like you might butt heads with your coach. I mean, I've had where I'm like, as a coach, sometimes I have clients that I'm like, I don't really want to call them, but I probably need to. I do need to. And so when I'm like, okay, like I don't know if they're on track, and I got to tell them something straightforward that I know that they don't want to hear. And I got to do it anyways. But, for those people that I've had to say things that they didn't want to hear, they often thank me for it because it's what they needed to hear. And they also needed to make a change. And it wasn't going to take something comfortable. It was going to be something like a punch in the arm, or sometimes a punch in the gut, to be able to make that change. So, to be clear, define a coach. If you can't do it yourself, who your coach is, like who is your coach going to be? Like, do they have the results? And are you going to be somebody who's coachable?
So I think that one of the things that I just want to put a point on is the coachability. And I will tell you that I'm a person who hates to work with a coach. And I will tell you that flat out when I'm hiring a coach, just because I'm one of those people. It's just like, I'm smart, I'm talented. And as you were talking about, there's that whole thing about, I'm good in this area, I should be good in this area too. But what I'm clear on is sometimes I just need to invest in myself, and I need to invest in myself by hiring somebody outside of myself to get me the results. Because if I was able to do it, I would have already done it. And so I have to sometimes stop and look at the results of what it is that the area that I'm really looking at, and just recognize that I've had no results in this area. I've been carrying around this extra, weight for all this time, and maybe it's time for me to hire somebody. And I know it's funny because I grappled with my husband about this whole thing, and I was just like, I say I want to exercise. Well, I'm not actually leaving the house. Well, it's hard to exercise. Well, unless you have a gym in the house, but it's hard for me to do the exercising that I want. And so I went out and hired a coach. And I went back to the coach that I had in the past. And what I told her is, you and I became friends. I go, I don't want to be your friend now that we're working together. I really want you to get me to exercise. So we have a set time, we have a set schedule, I pay her everything. So, I'm one of those people, I just like, I don't want to pay you and then not show up. Like, you go to the gym. I can't be a relationship like going, signing up for the gym. I go, I need to know that I'm going to be here. You're going to give me this much time. I'm going to do this. I'm going to pay in advance so that I will show up. And so I had to put in systems around the results that I wanted in this particular thing. And, we don't chat, we chat for like a minute when we get started, and then we start to exercise. So there's not a whole lot of the camaraderie that we've had in the past in the relationship. I think that is also important. So people need to understand that working with a coach doesn't have to be somebody that you like. It needs to be somebody that you respect, and somebody who is going to get you the results that you're looking for. I think all of those things that you highlighted, Kim, are an important part of coaching. Is there anything else that you would add?
I would say, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, going to the quote I mentioned earlier about pain, that you're going to experience pain, period. So either the pain of staying the same or the pain of changing. And when you're fed up and you're tired of staying the same and the same results, and it'll force you to change. Yeah, I think, but you can choose to let the force, the pain of the change or the pain of staying the same force you into making the change. But either way, something's gonna happen. But I would say that, but pain can be a great friend if you're willing to listen to it.
Mandy, anything you'd like to add?
No, I love that. And the pain, I think that's kind of where I was coming from with the cheerleader versus the am I too weak? And that, you're somewhere in between those two. And so that's what's great about a coach is a coach can balance those two worlds, like being your cheerleader when you need it, but also, pushing you into that pain zone so you can get that change that you need.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's really great, Mandy, is that that when I think of women and men, and I realize that this podcast is really mostly men or women listening to it, I imagine. But I found that what's really the strength for women is that we can also recognize when a change is needed, and we are very intuitive and willing to put the ego aside. And I think that because our culture, it kind of forces men to have to think that they can do it by themselves. So I think that we have I would say the benefit of the strength of being a woman is that we are able to go to community and reach out to other people, and it's the antithesis of sometimes what people say is, it's weak to need somebody else. No, in fact, you're stronger if you're able to reach other people. There's been times where I've been arrogant in thinking I can do something myself, but that only kind of deepened my failure. But it does take courage to reach out to other people, and I think that women have that in spades.
Kim, we've been talking about coaching in a general sense, and the term coaching is thrown around a lot in many different industries. So, and we've been talking in generalities about coaching. So, why would someone need a financial coach?
Well, that's a really good question. And, of course, like you said, people have this understanding or this past or default understanding about whatever they think coaching is. And specifically in money, if you think about money and what that means, money is just weaved into the fabric of everything in our lives. I mean, if you think about it, right? Like there's nowhere where in your life does money not touch. And then if you have have you ever had a coach for athletics? Right?
Yeah.
Right? Have you ever had a coach for nutrition?
Yes.
Like a nutrition coach? You've heard of a life coach. You've heard of like there's coaches, there's a fitness coach. There's, and people go to therapy. That's more of a personal transformational. Well, maybe, no, that's not the same. But there are, you can say, guides because coach is another word for a guide. So you have different, or teachers, right? So you have different titles to different areas of your life in every single subject of your life. So when it comes to the one area that is weaved into the fabric of everything in your life, why wouldn't you have a teacher or a guide that's specific to that area, and that helps you plan, and they are specific experts in this field that can plan short-term and long-term, and and you have to consider how that weaves into every other aspect of your life. So it's in a very real sense, a financial coach or a teacher or a guide or whatever you want to call it is, you can say, many coaches in one, because they're not money. They're dealing with your relationship with it. They're dealing with your humanity with yourself. They're dealing with your past relationship with money, and they're working on healing your relationship with money moving forward so that you can fulfill on your goals. So it's not simply as, here is a written out plan and these are the actions you take 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years from now. No, we're looking at what's it going to take what's in the way from you being able to connect to your purpose and have this money be a vehicle and a catalyst or a vehicle or that can actually take you to fulfill on your goals long term. So when you say why financial coaching is, why wouldn't you?
Well, I'm going to just double click on that because, we're in the space of it. And I think that it is interwoven through the fabric. But the other thing that I would really want to point out and share is why your money coach, because this is an area that so many people don't feel comfortable with. They don't have any peace of mind in this particular area. And having somebody who is outside of you, who can help you get to where you're trying to get to, I think that would be key, that would be really critical. So I often tell people that my job is to see what they don't see and put it in for them and really alter their relationship. So you and I have been in the industry, all of us have been in the industry in one way or another for a long time. And we know the difference that working with somebody who will really push us and push people and get them to do what they're not naturally inclined to do. And how many times have we heard, I'm not good at this money thing. I don't understand this money thing. I don't, so part of what we do as part of our education platform that we deliver on top of the personal coaching is we help expand people's understanding and get them on the path to financial peace of mind. And I think that that's one of the things that is the reason why you want to work with a money coach is we can help you get peace of mind around something that has perhaps been a concern or an area that you haven't felt confident in for decades.
And I would even add one more thing. Well,
yeah, I was gonna
go ahead, Mandy.
Sorry. Yeah, I just want to add on to that and say, we can get facts, statistics, and data, and oftentimes in the world of finance, that's all you get. And then it's like, well, it's that simple. The numbers add up. But there's a whole component of behavior that is so important part of actually taking a plan and putting it into action.
Yeah, and the one piece I saw to add is we've been exposed to all sorts of topics and subjects in school. We had a health class, we had a psychology class, we've had, biology and all the basics, right? Your basic curriculum in school. But nobody spends time talking about and actually educating on the application of this in reality, in real life. Once you actually get into your career, what do you do with it? What about all the taxes? What about all the laws? How do you apply this in real life? And because we've spent so little time on it growing up in school, that now I find that adults are desperately looking for this kind of education and wanting a proper coach. So I think the question for a lot of people now is, who is a qualified coach in the, financial world, and what makes a coach, a fit for me? So what's a good fit for me? I think that the question that our listeners can ask themselves then is, okay, given that I know I need a coach, now what is a good coach for me and what is my best style of learning?
I'm just gonna really just add to that because that is really critical when you're looking for a coach. The other thing is what I have found is a lot of people have looked for or have signed up for financial literacy classes and all the rest of that. And one of the things that we all offer is something called the Financial Foundations course. And so I was working with one of my participants who has in the past taken lots of financial literacy classes and not had any appreciable results as a result of that. And so what she said is, she goes, this coaching, I think this is the thing that has been missing from my life on all of these other courses, because having an opportunity to talk to you about what I've learned and having you ask questions about how I'm applying it in my life, I can see that that will make a difference. And I think that that's really what we deliver as financial coaches. Ladies, any last words on this subject?
No, I
No,
love that. Just our whole objective for this podcast and coaching overall is moving people to action.
that's right.
Got it. All right, ladies, thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys.
So we are winding down in our episode. So I just really want to leave you with one last fun question. So given the stage of your life, is the song that's the anthem for this stage of your life? And tell me why.
I love this question so much. Well, I was thinking about it, and I picked Love Story by Taylor Swift because if you look at the lyrics, we were both young when I first saw you. We have we're first introduced to money at a very young age, and it's a conversation that we pick up from other people. And, I close my eyes and the flashback starts. I'm standing there on a balcony in summer air. I mean, you can go through the whole lyric, like all of the lyrics, and it's very much like you can relate it all back to money, right? So you have your heartbreak, and if you think of any love story, you get introduced, you get kind of spellbound, and at some point you get your heart broken, and money is there, anytime. And then, you break up, but then you have that complicated relationship where you keep wanting to go back to it. It's like you want to break up with it, but you can't really break up with it. Like you really need it around, so my anthem has very much been an overall conquered love story, you can say. Like it is an ongoing relationship. I heard this quote recently that is, money can be like a cruel mistress. If you don't pay attention to her, she's gonna leave you. And so just like your finances, if you don't pay attention on an ongoing, everyday basis, give that love attention, she's gonna stick around and it's gonna grow and blossom. But if you stop paying attention, you're gonna lose it.
I love that. I love relationship with your money. I love that. All right, so to summarize today, what we've been talking about is, if you're a high performer and you discover that this is something that you can't do by yourself, then you need a coach. And that you have to be willing to be coached and be coachable. And that a coach is somebody who is going to push you to take action. And that you need to set clear goals in order to put together so the coach can actually help you to perform. And sometimes that involves ruthless compassion. Sometimes that involves them being a cheerleader. Sometimes that involves them breathing down your neck and pushing you in ways that maybe you don't want to go. But what's important is that a coach sees things that you don't. And that's why you need a coach, is that they can look at things that you're not seeing based on your experience and your scope. And that is what really pushes you to the next level. So if you want to know more about Felicia Gopaul and Mandy Herig, please go to hermoneystory.com. Please like, subscribe, and review our podcast. And we look forward to seeing you next episode.